The mirror of temptation, what Augustine saw in the heart of woman. She is not weak, but something in her stirs a weakness in you. Not because she intends it, not because she knows, but because the soul, when placed too close to beauty, can forget itself. Aurelius Augustine knew this, not from theory, not from distance, but from the battlefield of his own body. Before he was Saint Augustine, he was a man like any other, drawn by eyes he could not look away from, held by voices he could not silence, moved by touches that awakened both longing and regret. He wrote not as a judge, but as a confessor, not as one who overcame desire, but as one who drowned in it and rose only by grace. And in his confessions you can feel it, this tension between soul and skin, between eternal truth and fleeting pleasure. He did not hate women. He feared the power they carried in silence. Not power in the political sense, power in the realm of the hidden, of emotion, of mystery, of temptation. Augustine understood something most men avoid admitting, that women carry certain qualities that do not strike the mind directly, but dismantle it quietly. Not because women are manipulative, but because men are not always honest about how deeply they are moved by what they do not control. This story is not about blame. It is about awareness, because what you do not see will always control you. And Augustine's brilliance was not in resisting weakness, but in naming it. In this series, we'll explore 5 hidden aspects of women, not flaws, not sins, but subtle forces that have the power to bend a man's will if he remains unconscious. These are not universal rules, not games, not tactics. They are psychological truths filtered through the lens of human longing. And each one touches a different part of the male soul: the longing for comfort, the craving for validation, the hunger for beauty, the confusion between surrender and seduction, the quiet war between body and spirit. In Augustine's own words, I was in love with love, not with her, not with the woman herself, but with the feeling of being wanted, the warmth of being seen, the promise that something finally might fill the ache that logic could not touch. This is the first weakness, the one most men never name. It is not about sex. It is about intimacy misunderstood as salvation. Augustine believed that the soul, left unchecked, will search for God in the body of another. And that is when desire becomes torment. Because no woman, however radiant, can carry the weight of becoming your source of meaning. She can inspire. She can awaken. But if you place eternity on her shoulders, she will collapse. And so will you. This is where weakness begins. Not in her behavior, but in your projection. You make her the answer. You call her the way out. And when she disappoints because she must, you turn bitter, or addicted, or lost. Augustine's wisdom is not puritanical. It is clear. The first secret weakness is this: the woman who gives you back to yourself too easily. The one who mirrors you with softness, who confirms your masculinity without testing it, who gives you warmth when you have not earned it. It feels like home, but it can be a trap, not because of her, but because you want her affection to replace your own emptiness. An emptiness borrowed is never filled. Augustine fell into this again and again. He confessed his weakness not to shame himself, but to warn you. A man who does not know what he seeks will be destroyed by the woman who offers it without knowing what it costs. The storm beneath the smile, emotion, chaos, and the male soul. Not all danger is loud. Some enters the room slowly. A glance, a breath held too long, a silence that thickens the air. A woman does not need to raise her voice to unmake a man. Sometimes all she must do is feel, fully, freely, without apology. This Augustine knew well, not just as a thinker, but as a man caught in his own contradiction. He sought peace. He found turbulence. He sought reason. He drowned in emotion his gods. There is a kind of woman whose presence disrupts, not because she is cruel, but because she is alive in a way the average man is not prepared for. She moves like weather. She speaks with her whole body. She feels more in an hour than most men will admit in a year. And if you, as a man, are not rooted in yourself, her emotional honesty will pull you apart. Not through manipulation, through mirror. You've been trained to stay calm, to be rational, to make sense of things. But she does not live in sense. She lives in flow. When she laughs, the world lights. When she grieves, the room darkens. When she loves, it burns. And when she is hurt, it storms. This is not a flaw. It is power. And for Augustine, it was terrifying. He saw in woman not only beauty, but a wildness he could not predict. And what the male psyche cannot predict, it tries to control, or run from. But some do neither. They do what Augustine did. They fall into it. Emotion becomes gravity. A feeling becomes the law. And slowly, he begins to orbit her moods as if they were his own sun. This is the second weakness, the man who loses his center in the face of her emotion. Not because she is too much, but because he is not enough within himself. When she cries, he panics. When she pulls away, he clings. When she opens, he drowns. He doesn't know how to hold her without collapsing into her. Augustine, in his youth, did not yet know how to remain whole in the presence of feeling. He thought love was immersion. But true strength requires boundaries. To witness her rage without flinching. To feel her sadness without trying to fix it. To let her complexity exist without turning it into a problem. Only a man who has faced his own chaos can endure hers. But most men haven't. And so they try to soothe what they don't understand. Or dominate what makes them uncomfortable. Or disappear. Augustine, in his darker moments, tried all three. But the soul is not so easily calmed. Especially not the feminine soul. It needs to be seen, not solved, to be held, not handled. And if a man cannot meet that need, he will either resent her for it, or worship her for what he cannot reach in himself. Both are forms of weakness. Both come from fear. So what is the lesson? The woman who feels deeply is not a test. She is a mirror. She reveals the depth of your own emotional maturity by how you respond to hers. If you are reactive, she will feel unstable. If you shut down, she will feel unseen. If you chase peace, she will feel like chaos. But if you can remain rooted, she will feel like home. Augustine saw this too late. He wanted peace without passion. He wanted God without the tension of the human. But grace is not found in escape. It is found in presence. And sometimes, the soul uses a woman's emotional power not to torment a man, but to awaken him. To show him where he still fears the wild within himself. To invite him not to fix her, but to feel himself. Beauty that burns, the confusion between body and light. She walks past. You don't remember her words. You don't remember the air. You only remember the silence that followed, the kind of silence that leaves an ache behind it. This is beauty, and it is not kind. It does not ask your permission. It does not need to be earned. It simply appears, and you, without meaning to, find yourself kneeling in its direction. Augustine was not immune. He was, in fact, broken by beauty again and again. In his Confessions, he writes not just of his sins, but of the way certain women seem to carry something more than flesh, something luminous, something holy. And that was the danger. Because when a woman's physical beauty reflects something eternal, the soul forgets how to separate them. You stop seeing her as a person. You start seeing her as an answer. You think, if I could have her, I would be complete. But that is not desire. That is worship. And Augustine realized too late that what he thought was love was really a longing for God misplaced onto the curve of a shoulder, the softness of a voice, the warmth of a gaze. This is the third weakness, confusing the sacredness of beauty with the truth of the soul. Because beauty is sacred, but it is not salvation. It opens something in you. It reveals what is sleeping. But it cannot fill the thing it awakens. Only you can do that. Augustine saw this play out in his own life. He writes of the women who stirred him to poetry, to longing, to torment, not because they harmed him, but because he wanted to be filled by what they only reflected. You see, some women are not meant to be possessed. They are mirrors of the divine, messengers, not destinations. They carry a light that reminds you of something older than memory. And if you are not grounded, you will try to possess the light instead of letting it illuminate you. And that is when beauty becomes danger, not because of her, but because of your projection. Your hunger, your forgetting. To look at a beautiful woman is not sin, but to build your worth on her response to you. That is where the fracture begins. Because the moment she turns her gaze away, you feel hollow. Not because she took something from you, but because you tried to make her a temple for a God that lives inside you. Augustine came to understand this after much loss. He began to see that what he longed for in her was not her, but peace, stillness, union. And those things do not come from bodies. They come from within. The paradox is this: beauty awakens the soul, but it cannot complete it. It points, it invites, it reflects. But if you reach for it like salvation, you will turn gold into ash with your own hands. So what then? Do we avoid beauty? Shame it? Suppress it? Augustine tried that too. And he found that repression only twists the soul. No, the answer is not escape. The answer is discipline of vision. To look at beauty and see beyond it. To let it inspire without consuming. To let it move you without owning you. To say, yes, you are radiant, but the radiance I seek lives deeper still. This is not coldness, it is reverence, because only when you no longer need her beauty can you truly love her presence. And only when you've stopped worshiping the light outside can you begin to find the light within. The soft trap, when her surrender comes too easily. She leans in. She does not challenge. She welcomes. And for a moment, you feel like a king, not because you conquered, but because she offered herself before the battle ever began. Most men call this good fortune, but Augustine, later in life, would call it a trap. Not because of her, but because of what it awakens in the untested man. You see, there is a kind of woman who offers herself before she has seen who you are, who gives warmth before you've shown depth, who opens her heart to a man still lost inside himself. And this feels good at first. It feels like healing, like being chosen, like everything you thought love was supposed to be, unconditional, instant, effortless. But Augustine learned what most men don't realize until they've fallen. Surrender without reason is not intimacy. It is projection. And when she gives herself too easily, without truly knowing you, without seeing your flaws, without testing your presence, you will not rise into strength. You will fall into illusion, because you haven't earned her. You've been gifted something you weren't ready to carry. Augustine called this false rest. It is the illusion of completion, a simulation of wholeness, but beneath it, you are still fragmented. You think, she sees me. But no, she sees her longing, her idea of you, her dream of being safe, being loved, being wrapped in someone who will never leave. And you are complicit, because it feels good to be idealized, to be needed, to be the source of her glow. But slowly, something begins to rot inside you. Because without challenge, without resistance, without the sacred tension between masculine and feminine, you lose your edges. She becomes your purpose. Her approval becomes your compass. And now, without noticing, you are no longer leading. You are following the pull of her affection, her need, her sweetness. This is the fourth weakness, being seduced not by her power, but by her softness given too soon. Augustine saw this in himself. He chased comfort. He longed for belonging. And so he accepted a kind of love that did not ask him to become more, only to stay close. And for a man still uncertain of himself, this feels like peace. But it is not peace. It is a forgetting. He stops pursuing discipline. He stops facing himself. He hides in her. And at first she is happy. She thinks she's found her man. But soon she feels it too, the passivity, the lack of spine. Because when a man is not centered in himself, no amount of female devotion will save him. She may love you, but if you disappear into that love, she will lose respect. And she may not even know why. This is not a call to harden yourself. It is a call to stay rooted, to know the difference between love and dependence, between tenderness and escape. A real woman, a woman who sees, does not want to give herself to a boy wearing the mask of a man. She wants to meet the soul behind the skin. She wants to feel your spine under your smile. She wants to give herself to someone who knows who he is, with or without her. But if she surrenders before she knows who she is, before she knows who you are, then her offering is not sacred. It is desperate. And if you receive it without clarity, you will both sink. Augustine believed this is why so many men remain lost, because they confuse easy intimacy with deep connection. But deep requires depth, and depth requires tension, time, challenge, clarity. Only when a woman chooses you after knowing you, after watching you, after seeing you at your worst, only then is her surrender meaningful. Because then it is not fantasy. It is truth. No woman will save you. She loves you. You feel it, in her voice, her presence, the way her eyes soften when you walk into the room. She gives you her attention, her warmth, her body, perhaps even her loyalty. And in that moment, something ancient inside you breathes out. Finally, it says, I am enough. This is the most beautiful deception a man can fall into. And Augustine, who once thought love was the highest blessing, came to learn that love, when misunderstood, is also the most elegant trap. This is the fifth and final weakness, the belief that a woman's love will fix what is broken in you, that her affection will erase your doubts, that her touch will cleanse your guilt, that her presence will silence the storm within your mind. But she cannot do this, and she was never meant to, because no matter how deeply she loves you, no woman can rescue a man from the parts of himself he still refuses to face. Augustine learned this not in a moment, but in a lifetime. He chased love from city to city, bed to bed, heart to heart, believing each time, this is the one. And each time, he was met not with healing, but with the quiet return of his own emptiness. The problem was not them. It was him, his illusion, his refusal to do the deeper work. Because to use a woman's love as a substitute for self-confrontation is to use her as a shield against yourself. And that is not love. It is avoidance. She is not a cure. She is not a mother for your wounds. She is not the answer to the question you still haven't asked. She is at best a mirror, a presence, a force of nature that reflects back to you exactly where you stand and where you have not yet dared to go. Augustine realized that even divine love does not descend into a heart that is too full of projections. And the same is true with women. If you see her only as your savior, you will not truly see her. You will see a fantasy, a figure made of your longings, a mask. And one day, when her humanity breaks through, when she is tired or afraid or imperfect, you will feel betrayed. Not because she failed you, but because you expected her to be more than human. And no woman can carry that weight without breaking beneath it. So what is the truth? What did Augustine come to understand in the ashes of his former loves? That only one thing saves a man: his willingness to face himself, his darkness, his desires, his weakness, his pride, his emptiness. Not to fix it overnight, but to stop running from it, to sit with it, to ask, what is this ache trying to teach me? Only then can love be true. Only then can a woman be free to love you as a man, not as a child in need of rescue. Because the irony is this: when you stop needing her to save you, she begins to see you as someone she can finally trust. Not because you are invulnerable, but because you are honest, rooted, humble. Augustine eventually found peace, but not through romance, not through devotion from another. He found it when he turned inward, when he gave his longing a name. Not woman, not lust, not even love, but God, the eternal, the source. And only then could he return to the world of love with clarity, with discipline, with reverence, because he no longer needed it to make him whole. And that is the moment a man becomes a man. When he can look at the most beautiful woman, the most tender gaze, the most intoxicating warmth, and say, I see you, but I do not need you to complete me, because I have come home to myself. What Augustine would tell you now: you will be tempted by comfort, by emotion, by beauty, by surrender, by the promise of salvation in another. And all of these things may be real, but they are not the answer. They are not what you were born to serve. Because a woman can love you, but she cannot build you. She can hold you, but she cannot raise you. She can mirror your strength, but she cannot supply it. That is your task. And once you accept it, everything changes. Because now you do not love to be filled. You love to overflow, not from need, but from presence. This is what Augustine found in the end, not the death of desire, but the sanctification of it. When longing is no longer desperate, but sacred. When love is no longer escape, but offering. Underscore 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 underscore. What to watch next if this story stirred something in you. If you've seen even one of these 5 weaknesses in your own heart, don't walk away unchanged. In our next video, we'll explore the shadow of the feminine. How men unconsciously project their mother, muse, savior, or destroyer onto every woman they meet, and how to reclaim your vision before it ruins your love. Until then, walk with presence, love with clarity, and remember, she is not here to save you. She is here to meet the man who already saved himself.